So the first step, as I said, is creating our own VPC and then creating a subnet inside that VPC in one of the availability zones of the region, and then exposing the VPC to internet or connecting it to the internet using Internet Gateway. So let's do and prepare all of this first before creating the EC2. Let's actually clean this up a little bit so that we are starting from a clean state. First of all, I'm going to remove all the validation and stuff from the variables. And right now we have CIDR blocks and eval zone variables, and we have the VPC and subnet configuration from the previous part. And let's actually make some changes to this to make it more reusable and clean up a little. I have renamed the VPC and subnet to be my app VPC and my app subnet to be independent of the environment, because let's say we are passing in the environment, whether it's develop or staging or production from outside. So all of this is more or less generic. And let's actually make these CIDR blocks own variables. So let's create a variable called VPC CIDR block and another one for subnet CIDR block. And these are going to be separate variables, and we're going to assign values to those variables at the end. So we have the CIDR block here and subnet block, right? So these two will change. And then we have the availability zone as a variable also set, and we can decide in which AZ of the region the subnet will be created and the EC2 then will be deployed in. And let's also change the name tag. So for every component that we're creating, let's give it a prefix of the environment that it's going to be deployed in. So on a development server, all components will have dev prefix. On production environment, they'll have prod prefix and so on. So I'm going to create a variable called, let's call it env prefix. And I'm leaving all the variables empty. Later we can do validation here, we can do type check, description, etc. Right now they're pretty descriptive from the naming, so let's leave it empty. And what we're going to do is we're going to do string interpolation. That's basically having variable value and string glued together, right? So we're going to do something like dev VPC. And this dev will be basically a prefix that is set as a variable. And in order to use the variable value, we're going to do $ and curly braces, right? So using variable outside, not inside the string or inside the quotes, is var.variable name. If we want to use the variable inside a string, because we want to glue it or put it together with another string, we are using $ curly braces, and inside here we can do var and the variable name. So this is how we can use variables inside the strings. And we're going to do the same for all the other components. So let's do prefix first. So this is going to be dev or prod or staging, whatever, dash subnet 1. Great, so we have VPC and we have the subnet. Now let's actually create these two again, and we're going to see some of the components that AWS creates by default whenever we create a new VPC. So I'm going to save this. Let's actually assign values to those variables. So I have deleted my terraform.tvars content, so it's completely empty. We're going to now start setting those values. So I'm just going to copy all of them. Let's remove the variable here and just leave the names. And we're going to assign values to each. So first of all, VPC, let's give it the same one as before. It's going to be 10.0.0.0.16. And let's make it 10.0.10.0 24. Let's set the availability zone to EU West 3B. And let's make the environment prefix dev. So we have all the values we need. We can also set the region in the provider as an alternative to setting it as an environmental variable in the command line interface before executing Terraform. I'm just going to set it here. And this is going to be EU West 3. That's the region. And we're creating the subnet in one of these regions AZs. So everything is ready for this simple use case, which we have actually already executed before. And first of all, let's do Terraform plan. This will show us what Terraform will be executing. And since I have deleted everything created previously, right now I see that Subnet will be created and VPC as well. So let's actually apply this. I'm gonna do auto approve so that I don't need to input confirmation for the apply. And let's see. Great, so 2 resources have been added. Let's now go to AWS console and let's go to VPC. And here I have the dev VPC. This is the name that we provided here. This was the environmental prefix set here, dev and VPC. So this is the default one that every region comes with. This is what AWS generates for every region by default. And this is the second one that we just created. And this is the CIDR block we specified. And let's also check the subnets. And again, I have 3 default subnets because by default, a default VPC comes with default subnets, 1 per availability zone in that region. So if a region has 3 zones, then it's going to have 3 subnets, and this is ours. And it's good to give names to our components because then we can differentiate it from the default ones. And we know that it's the one that we created. So our subnet is here as well. Let's actually go inside the VPC and let's see some of the things that AWS actually generated for us once we created this VPC.